I love New York. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I always
Did you come up with that, or is that?
Welcome to Empire State of Grind, a podcast about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. Please be advised that the hosts of this podcast are practicing lawyers or other professionals in the tech industry, and that some of the guest employers on this podcast may be clients of the hosts. The information and content provided during this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or financial advice, or as the positions or stances of the employers of any of the individuals.
Welcome to Empire State of Grind, a podcast where we get to know the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. I'm your host, Aaron Fisher, and I'm joined today by John Shankman, founder and CEO of Hastag Labs, a cutting-edge ad tech SaaS platform that empowers publishers to reach their revenue goals. We'll learn about the ad tech space, the opportunity gap that John saw, and what it was like to build a bootstrap tech company that recently just had a successful exit. This episode is especially cool to me as John and I have been friends since college, and we are joined by another college friend, our producer Brian Neaman, who is taking on a new role today as co-host. Let's jump in.
All right, welcome to another episode of Empire State of Grind. Today we have John Shankman, the founder and CEO of Hastag Labs, and we're also joined by a special guest host who you've also seen some of his work on the show. He's our producer, Brian Neaman. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Aaron, or should I say
That's
Aaron?
fine.
Yeah.
So one thing you're going to notice that's cool about today's show is the three of us are friends from college.
Long time ago
So
now.
we've known each other way before any of us did anything professionally.
True.
Let alone be a lawyer, producer, or founder of a successful tech company. So let's get into it a little bit with John. So John, you are the founder of Hastag Labs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about like what the company does and the products you guys sell?
Well, most people, I'll put it this way. My friends from high school still don't know what I do. So hopefully I can help my friends from college understand what I do. It's a world wide web of internet websites. And sometimes when you go to websites, they have ads on them. There is a whole connected and fragmented systems behind those web pages that serve advertisements. And my company specializes in helping publishers coordinate the delivery of those advertisements. There's a term I've come across in the past decade or so, which is called boutique systems integrator. It's sort of someone who specializes in helping a company integrate software. We more or less did that for a product that Google purchased in 2007 called DoubleClick. Google acquired DoubleClick ad server in 2007 for $3.1 billion. And my company operates within that realm. We help publishers integrate GAM, and then around 2014, or maybe a little earlier, an open source ad auction framework came out called Prebid.js. We became specialists in that. And in general, I would call it revenue operations for digital media publishers. We specialize in that, and we do, again, I'm kind of all over the place, but we do consulting. We've developed proprietary software, and we do, day-to-day services
That's cool. It's a
for
full
publishers.
suite of products and services for publishers to get their ads out there in a digital market.
Yeah, I would say if you're a publisher and you have ads on your website and you want to understand it better or make more money, working with my company, Hastag Labs, is a good idea. And over the past decade, we've broken a little bit out of that just advertising only niche and into data intelligence and business intelligence by developing a third-party data aggregator system called HTL Exec.
Nice. And this is a SaaS platform, right?
Yeah.
Part of it?
Yeah, software as a service. I read a LinkedIn post in probably around the same time, 2015. I don't know, actually, I got to be careful with that. I don't know when LinkedIn came out with posts, right? Whenever LinkedIn came out with posts, I read about SaaS on LinkedIn and decided it was a good business model.
I'm not the one to call you on it.
I'll have to go back and check.
So when was the company founded then? Around then?
Yeah, 2014.
Okay.
2014 is when I started.
That's fine. I had like just graduated law school. Where were you in 2014?
2014, I was just deep in advertising land, directing and editing commercials. So
Okay, cool.
Lost in that sauce.
You were founding your company. I was living with my dad looking for a job.
Honestly, I've worked with Neaman a bunch, and when Hastag Labs first came out, it was kind of like a branded content studio, which is an interesting little known fact. And we pivoted to this other art called ad ops because that's where we were getting traction. But I mean, Neaman is honestly a really big inspiration for me in terms of getting things done and just honestly not being scared to do things. I don't know how else to put it. But yeah, he really helped me develop a mentality of, getting stuff done. So it's
he's
nice
a good partner for like my experience with him with the show now is like that. It's like the voice of reason sometimes, or just, I think what you're saying too, not pushy, but like suggesting other ways of looking at it that you go, oh, that does make sense.
I don't know if this will make it into the show, but I can actually point to a specific moment.
Please do.
We were developing branded content for an automobile brand, and we were shooting, this is probably dangerous, but we were shooting content on the, I guess, FDR. And like, I was just like horrified. Like, I was just like sitting in my chair, like not even the chair, in the back of the car. Like, I was the producer essentially. I sold it, and these guys were just going gonzo, like shooting footage, like out of the sunroof. And I was just like, A, I'm gonna die right now, and B, this is not gonna end well. The truth of the matter is, it ended very well, and everyone was happy with the footage. And so that would just kind of encapsulates what I'm trying to talk about.
No, that's awesome. All right, so you guys started in 2015. Like I said, we all have 2014. We all have like a cool integrated background with each other. So can you just give us like for the show to get an idea of the company size? So like how many employees, customer count, stuff like that.
Yeah, I started the company really as a solo practitioner, doing ad ops. Very quickly, a colleague that I had from previous endeavors joined about 6 months in. It's fair to call him the technical co-founder. He's awesome. And so we were really just doing like ad ops services for a while. And he's an engineer, web engineer. And so having him by my side really, it kind of gave me super strength, like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Well, let's debug it. And, engineers are good at debugging things. And so that was awesome. And then the company really grew organically. By the time, spoiler alert, we exited, we had like 25 people.
Cool. And that was recent, right?
Very recent.
The exit. Yeah, we're going to dive into that a little bit. But the other thing I think interesting, because it's a little different than some of the other like guest profiles we have on here, this was like a fully bootstrapped operation, right? Like no VC funding or...
Yeah, we bootstrapped a bona fide software company.
That's amazing. I think that's cool. Kind of like want to emphasize that to the audience because there's a lot of other ways of doing it that honestly take on less personal risk. So I think that's worth noting. Also, it's cool. Like you can do it without, necessarily $100 million to start.
It's hard.
I think, don't doubt that.
Our space in particular is a bit of a scrum. You could maybe call it. I'll leave it at that. But I think the technical co-founder and I, we were just it was unspoken, but I think we were both like ready to try and build a company. And
That's
so
cool.
it was the right timing for both of us, I think.
And I know you mentioned you call the customers of the company are publishers. Absolutely. Can you explain who is a publisher for the audience?
Yeah. Barstool Sports is a publisher. Learfield is a company that operates all the NCAA websites. I mean, really any website that gets traffic is a publisher. One interesting thing, that kind of is a realization I've had, any website, any app is a publisher. Amazon.com is a publisher.
So basically a publisher is anywhere where an advertisement can be placed.
Yeah, something that has, attention Like
Or
people
it's a site that, makes content. Any content could be a sale. Amazon, they sell content, they sell products, but it's content.
Yeah. One evolution in our business right now is this thing called retail media networks, and like CVS.com is a publisher and they are running ads now.
Interesting. And it's like, what do they want to run ads for on their site? Or is it agnostic and like that's where your company's trusted to place a appropriate?
Well, I think
is it for like products they would sell?
Yeah, I mean it depends. And this is I think confusing for a lot of people in sense of like, oh, I'm in ad tech. And like traditionally ad tech is really focused on the advertiser, right, which makes sense, like ad tech for advertisers. We specifically focus on ad tech for the sellers of the media space and the advertisers. And so, in the case of publishers, like brand awareness, if you're going to advertise on Learfield, like you're probably, selling tickets or sporting goods or something like that. The digital space is big on data. The deprecation of the cookie has been a big headline for a while. And so advertisers target their advertisements using data. Retailers tend to have amazing data because, like think about CVS or Amazon, right, like they know
everything
really
about
data.
your customer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So what is like, obviously I'm sure it's changed over time, but what is your role at the company or how do you see it as like the CEO and founder?
Man, I did a lot, and I like to say highfalutin things now. I explored business through doing the company. Like the accounting function, the product management function, the technical function. I mean, my background was in sales, so I was kind of like a natural seller. And yeah, I really did it all except write the code, and and that sounds a little something, but I'm just reminded of like this essay that came out recently that maybe your audience is familiar with, like Paul Graham's Founder Mode. Yeah. And I kind of distill that down to like, if you want to be successful, you got to get into the details. And like that, I got into the details.
We actually had another guest who was they're in a Y Combinator. They didn't call it a class. Do you remember what he calls it?
Cohort,
that might be it. Yeah, I'm sure it's in the book. He quoted Paul Graham a few times on the show, but it's all stuff that makes sense. I mean, it's funny, man. I found that for myself, like I'm not running any big businesses, but even just leaving kind of the corporate world, starting a law practice, and even the podcast, it's like there's way more things that go into it that you don't anticipate and just have to figure it out.
Absolutely.
For example, like how to run Facebook ads has been like, let's say, a challenge for me at the very least. But it's also, I think what's cool is like if you like learning, there is this fun aspect, right, of like accomplishing something you didn't even know was a problem 10 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the Neaman comment, like, that I think that is a super important skill set. And I think some people get it naturally and other people can learn it. And it's just definitely, you got to just make it happen.
100. Yeah, I totally agree. Though it's funny because I listen to these things like probably more than anybody just through the editing process.
Oh, these podcasts.
No, this conversation I'll hear 50 times before the audience does. Just for all right,
that sounds like
10.
Yeah,
5.
Yeah,
actually,
less and less
0.
as time goes.
Once.
But no, one thing that I'm finding comes up a lot is that idea of like what's a common thread between a lot of these. They're not even always founders, just people who are successful at an early stage company, is that like whether it's self-belief or it's just thrust on you, it's like you figured some shit out that like you didn't study, you don't have a background in. It's just like that attitude.
Just don't give up.
Yeah, just figure it out. It doesn't have to be perfect, just figure it out.
I'll throw out a platitude, or it's not even a platitude, it's more of a maxim. Time plus pressure equals diamonds. Like you really got to believe in that, and you got to really honestly try your best every day too. Like, you've got to really believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, sticking on this, do you find Because this is something I've been struggling with a little bit. Like, do you find as a founder, it is self-imposed, or do you find that drive from somewhere else? Like, to frame it, like when I was at a company, I had pressure from a lot of different people about performance, right? And now that I'm running my own stuff, it's like I'm the one who has to, like the boss, Aaron, has to put pressure on the worker, Aaron, to get stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, I did put the title founder in my LinkedIn profile, so I can't really say I didn't think of it. But I never like had founder like worship or anything.
I just mean more as like a, you know, like you said, you started a solo practice.
I think you want to be successful. And then at a certain point, I mean, the thing that I was thinking about on the way over here is like, it does become your livelihood at a certain point. And like, you know, existential comes to mind, and like, you know, we're hustling for money and we're grinding for our families or whatever. But like, if you think about before money was out there, like instead of doing it for money, you were doing it for food. And like, this is like back in the day, you know, like before the advanced economy existed. But, you know, this is kind of, it becomes existential at a certain point, I think.
Yeah, it is kind of.
It could be. It doesn't have to be, but it could be.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Because you kind of, I mean, the way I'm looking at it, to be fair, is like one thing we have in common now is maybe a little different since you sold the company, but like we don't have a boss. So I think when you are out of that kind of like corporate structure, where do you find the motivation to keep pushing was something I at least struggled with at first.
I mean, my answer is like super easy. It's just, I had a lot of bosses, right? Like every single client is a boss. Every customer is a boss. Like keeping the client and the customers happy. And so it's almost harder than having one boss. Like you have a lot of bosses. And so like that, that was just how it felt, honestly.
Yeah, it's funny you said that's exactly how I feel, but I feel, weird way of saying it, I don't feel less pressure. I just don't mind it. Because they're my clients. Do you know what I mean? Like I owe them clients, this thing. No, I'm saying like the way I feel about it is different. When you're paying me to do it, and it's like you're telling me what work to do, some of the stuff I don't want to do, I'm not as excited about.
It's hard to do a client service when you're not getting all the rewards of that job.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
You're eating a lot of pie.
Some of my clients are other like in-house, let's say like legal departments. So I'll tell them all the time because I can relate. I've had their roles in the past, but now that I'm on the outside, I view it differently. That like, you can give me either the hardest stuff you want me to do or the easiest, and I'm going to be just as happy to do either one because I just want to do what makes you feel good about this relationship. Yeah. Where when I was in-house and like experienced, this easy, like mindless stuff would drive me insane.
Right.
Go get someone junior to do this. Like, there's like definitely an ego aspect, but also I have so much work to do that I'm not getting paid by the hour. I feel like maybe I'm complaining too much. What I'm trying to say is like the mindset has totally shifted to like, again, email about work to do. I'm like grateful for the work.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a hustle. You don't know what's around the corner, so you can't take your foot off the gas.
Right. So it's like, it's not the amount of work or pressure that's changed, but the way I look at it is totally different.
Yeah. No, it's great to have customers, you know, it's a good problem to have for sure. And I think like, you know, the idea that you don't reap all of the reward, you know, especially in sales, I think, you know, is a little bit of what drove me to start my own company, right? Like, I'm sure it's similar like in everything, but you know, in sales, like you'd bring in a big deal and you would execute it and you'd work so hard and like no one cared at the org. And it's just like, why, you know? And so like that element of it, I think did drive me to do my own thing a little bit.
That was something for me too. Like as an in-house deal lawyer, I think the best way to describe it is like success is short-lived. Like you close one deal, the reward is there's 10 more coming. Well, you know what I mean? So there's no like catching your breath or like celebrating it too much.
Of course.
If you're lucky to be somewhere successful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And like, there's a number in sales, particularly. And I watched, my dad was in sales, and so I watched this, and then like, like sales is not protected, really. Like the sellers aren't always like you can 100%. Be, but it's easy.
No, I agree. It's out. Like from the inside out. It's like the company cares about the account, not the people servicing it, not. Right, those are replaceable parts, including the lawyer who's working on the deal.
Salespeople are valuable though. It's
they're like they're the most. I mean, they're the highest paid people at the company.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. What you guys are saying.
But no, he's right. Like not on a personal level. Like you do. There's almost some like animosity towards it because this is what. And my mind had changed on this a lot. Is like you don't get why are they getting paid so much until you start to realize like. Where did this customer come from? Like you go try to get them to buy this. Well, right. I don't even know where to start.
Without a sale, you got nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, at like a Datadog, I'm working on deals with the biggest companies in the world, and you start respecting the hell out of someone who can bring a Fortune 10 company to the table to buy our services. Like if you went, hey man, I'll pay you a lot of money to me to do it. I don't know that I could do that.
It's a complex sale.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. Oh, am I going to go to Amazon and knock on their door?
Yeah. Message the procurement people on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, man, I got this cool software for you. So it sounds like you found that experience to be really helpful when you started Hastag.
Yeah, I mean, get a contract out, do the customer service, onboarding. Yeah, I mean, when we were just talking, I was just thinking of Steve Ballmer like taking over for. Bill Gates, like he was the head sales guy, right? Like, so I think CEOs, like they're responsible for the business and founders are responsible for the business. And to Brian's point, like you don't have customers. What do you do?
100%. You don't have a business.
Steve Ballmer, I think he has more net worth than Bill Gates at this point, right?
Really? I don't know. I know
I'm pretty sure Ballmer is wealthier than Gates.
We're going to take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll find out what experiences led to John starting his own business and to the decision to sell the company. We will also discuss the good and bad of working with your friends and how to build relationships in business.
This episode is brought to you by NextGen Law. NextGen Law supports today's modern tech companies, bringing expertise in drafting and negotiating customer contracts and scaling of go-to-market legal functions. For more information, visit nextgenlaw.com. That's NextGenLaw with hyphens in between each word.com.
Yeah, I'm curious from John if you could tell, like, how did you like think of the idea for Hastag Labs, or how did you know to create that? Like, what data points did you have?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just followed the market traction, frankly. Yeah. And I think we've always done that. And like going back to the point with venture funded companies versus bootstrap companies, like when you're bootstrapped, you do what the customer needs and do what the customer wants. And so I had experience, I was always interested in like how the internet worked. And so, and I frankly, I was just very passionate about blogging and digital media in the early 2000s. And like that kind of all came together and led me to this discipline called ad ops, which is like setting up ads and ad servers. And so people needed that service. People still need that service. It's, this interesting Venn diagram of like technically complex and sophisticated in order to really understand it. And then, you kind of got to push a lot of buttons. And so, it's kind of like it's 50-50, data entry and then like, JavaScript, understanding JavaScript. And so that I found customers through doing outsourced ad ops and, got traction there and kind of just followed it from there.
Like, I know that you had a job at Federated Media for a little bit, right? And like,
great company.
Did that expose you to like that marketplace of like the publishers and the advertisers? Did you kind of come into that already knowing that space was there?
Yeah. I mean that, my whole career is connected. I read a book by John Patel because my first job was in sales, selling access to a database. It was a fine job, but it wasn't passionate. And again, this is I can tell this story. I tell it a lot. It's on medium.com too. But like I was at work, and the guys, when I was on break, I did sell a lot. I was like, this is still like we were getting orders via fax machines. And the guys at work would give me a hard time because I would always read the blogs and, the Bill Simmons yellow page, like on ESPN page 2. Like my boss would see that through the office and he'd be like, Shank's reading Bill Simmons again, like give me like a hard time. And then one day, one of the guys was like, yo, Shank, like, why don't you work on the internet? I was like, dude, Nick, like, that's honestly the best idea I've ever heard. And so I went to Barnes and Nobles and bought a book about Google. And it was this guy, John Patel, who wrote it. And he was starting an ad network at the time called Federated Media. So I emailed him and I got a job in the biz.
That's cool. All right. So we had alluded to it, but you recently had an exit with HTL. So first of all, congratulations. It's really cool.
Thank you.
You want to tell us a little bit about it and kind of like how it came to be, like what led to the decision?
Yeah. I kind of mentioned this a little bit. I think, the technical co-founder and we always wanted to build software. I think we always had a vision, honestly, for this third-party data aggregator is what I would call it. Now, I would not have known that to call it that so long ago, but it was more of like the backbone of reporting for publishers. It kind of comes to mind when I think about what we wanted to build. And so basically, I'd get the customers, we'd do the outsourced ad ops, Craig would help me, and like we'd invest in the software on the side. Through that grind, we actually invented a second product called the HTL Bid, which is what I would call a category leader, or really a category defining piece of software. It really innovates on where the state of the art was prior to it existing. And so we'd always been building HTL exec. We came across this thing called the HTL Bid in like 2018 or 2019. And then we developed this other plugin or Chrome extension called HTL Debug. And like these products found product market fit and they were scaling naturally. And so, and listen, I am a salesperson. I like salespeople. I think they do a critical job function. But like, especially in software, like you're only as good a seller as your product is. And
without a doubt.
I got lucky, or whatever, and we had really good products. And I think the company got to a place where it was like, what are we going to do? For the past few years, honestly, I've felt like an asset manager, not cash asset manager, but like legitimately like a software asset manager. I was like, wow, these things rock and I need to keep them going.
Yeah.
And so, at a certain point, I had like basically 3 options in front of me. It was keep bootstrapping. I'm going up against massive, I'm running stuff from Amazon, like 9-figure public companies I'm competing with, 9-figure private companies I'm competing with. This was, we're competing at a high level and I'm bootstrapped. I could have raised money, obviously, or I could sell the company. That was basically my 3 options. I truly, really do like, and believe it. I say love a lot, but try to cut that back. I really do like the software products, and I honestly really do believe in them as very useful and valuable to publishers. And so I brought on a president and COO, a guy named Alex Magnan, who I've known from the New York City media scene for a really long time. Like he was the CRO of this company called Thought Catalog. And then he scaled revenue at a company called Giphy and did an exit with Meta. And then, and I had some like inbound interest based on what I was doing a couple of years ago. So I brought Alex on and, to kind of look at the company and kind of say like, what are we going to do, from a corp dev standpoint? And that was a great partnership. And we started, just seeing what's up like last October, and some stuff came out of the woodwork and we went into a process like starting in April of this year. And we found the company that ultimately acquired us, which was, I've been using this term ton lately, subject matter experts, a group of a company that was of similar size, 100% in our space, of really good subject matter experts at publisher ad tech. They also are software developers. And they had some products that are similar and mostly actually complementary to what we've developed, which I would say what we've developed is like, again, the category leading interfaces for revenue operators. They had a lot of code. They did incredible customer service and they needed the interfaces. Yeah. And so they actually raised money like a year ago now. And yeah, they used that money to acquire my company. And
That's
so now
awesome,
we've combined, so they acquired it outright, but you can call them, I'm learning like merger, acquisition. These are synonyms.
Yeah.
And it was a true merger. I mean, we put together a team of fairly equal size. They may have had a few more people, but, we basically doubled the size of the entity. And frankly, there hasn't been software as a service in this publisher ad tech space in a really robust way before. And so I think, we're the leading software as a service publisher ad tech company at this point.
That's awesome. Yeah. Something you're saying that I saw in my career at Datadog was the benefit of acquiring the right people and IP, rather like the speed that you can bring those things to market together, especially if you're building like a bigger platform.
Yeah.
Was something I think it's a very underrated part of Datadog's story, but many of us who were there, like the first, not just the first since I was there, but the log management product we acquired skyrocketed the company.
Nice.
Like we could have built one. They said, we like this one. I think we were just using it.
I like to hear that.
Yeah. So they went and we acquired it. And like my role was to help understand what it is this thing does so I can get it in contracts and order forms. We can sell it.
That's cool.
And I remember sitting down with like, what would have been your role? So it's like the person who founded this company. Please explain to me what this thing is, because I have no idea how it operates. Like, because I got to figure out, do we need different rights in the data?
Sure.
And it turns out, logs are a lot different and contain a lot more sensitive data than other data types we were processing. But more importantly,
what was the name of the original company?
Logmatic.
Logmatic. Okay.
And what's funny, I've had this talk with the founder there, because so he comes to Datadog, the company becomes very successful, right? And we had acquired a few others afterward. Most of them worked out as well. And I remember I'm at the Paris office, and it was like a recruiting effort where, they have like interns can ask the leadership questions and like other people from different companies are there and whatnot. And I heard this guy get asked the same question 3 times that day that later on we were just laughing about, but they're like, what made you want to join Datadog? And it's like, in reality, it was exactly what you said. It was like their choices were compete with bigger companies or kind of go out of business because you're not, at least at that time, they were not going to be able to raise enough money.
Yeah. I mean, listen, my next chapter is scaling software. I think I got to know what software is. I built an intuition around it in the first 10 years of Hastag Labs. And, we were lucky to find product market fit. And I think, again, it's all about, it's timing, a lot of it, just kind of, some of it's timing, some of it's finding opportunity, but
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to, obviously you can, but scaling software with growth capital seems like the play.
Yeah, no, I think what's cool, and I've said this on this podcast before, is like, there's certain experience you can only get from having a previous success. And it's helpful to rely on that going forward, or beneficial, just because the amount of companies that are successful are small and finite, that like by necessity, you're not going to have many other people with that same experience to help bring it again, right? So it's not, in my world anyway, I'm like, it's not that I'm the best lawyer. It's just I happened to be at a company that scaled really quickly, so I learned a lot, right?
Made me want to work with you, so.
Exactly. Yeah. Hastag Labs is is a client. I've worked with John and Alex, so shout out Alex is the man also. Yeah, no, it's cool too. I mean, that, to be honest, I tell them this all the time, but it's also fun to work with your friends and like help them in their bit. Like what I can bring value to brings value to something you care about. Feel cool.
We're fun, but we're serious.
Yeah, exactly.
All three of us, fun people, great times.
Well, I've heard this advice a few times that like I think is caveated, which is like don't go into business with your friends. And I found like there's a big caveat there. Don't go into business with people because you're friends.
Fair.
You go into business with people because of what they're good at.
Yeah.
And if you're also friends, that can actually be really cool. Yeah. But if you're doing it just because we like each other, but you don't bring any actual skills, there's going to be a problem. Right?
Well, I mean, just navigating relationships is a really big part of business in general. And so, you know, if you have like pre-existing relationships, I mean, I like seriously navigating relationships is a big part of business. I don't think I've ever said that, but I think it's true.
Certainly management.
Maybe it's the only part of business, actually.
I was giving someone the advice yesterday. They were saying like that their boss is a people pleaser and they're not. And that's like a difference between them. And I kind of pointed out like, that's why that person's the boss. Because most people aren't going to know which one to use better at the job. But getting along with other people is a good way to get like hired in the higher roles.
I mean, like, you know, again, this is just like totally in the moment and just thinking out loud. I mean, you know, like the whole stereotypical thing with like middle managers is they don't do anything, but maybe they're just great relationship managers.
No, I totally agree. It's valuable. When I would hire people at Datadog, and people can hold me to this, I would always give the same advice because I realized this was true of my role, and so it would be true of theirs, which is like we supported sales for the most part. Sure. Other aspects too, like I mentioned, like the product managers and whatnot. But I knew early on that like if everyone in sales didn't like working with me, I'd get fired regardless of how good I am at the job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
you want to be easy to work with.
No one can save you. It's not, I don't think easy to work with is the right, like there's just got to be value out of the experience. You don't necessarily have to like me as a person, but we should respect each other's roles and like see value in.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So it's like some of the salespeople there, at the end of the day, I'm in awe of like, how did we get this deal done? It's amazing. But my point is like, I totally agree with you. Like how people perceive working with you is equally, if not more important than like the actual skill. And it may not seem fair, but it's reality.
Yeah. I mean,
do you find that true in your role? Like you work with talent, like that's difficult.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, what you're saying before, like, I think there's like the right amount of difficult when you're working with somebody. You want somebody that pushes back in the right way. You don't want someone just being like, okay, sure. Because you're like, the product won't be as good. You need someone to kind of like poke a little bit. So
for sure.
But
well, you guys know me. I'm not easy to work with. That's why.
But I think that's important. I mean, I was thinking about also before about John because, like, you know, you started off just your own entity. You brought on your engineer to build, but then you grew a team.
Yeah,
and it's like there's no real like. I mean, I guess you had like mentors to like lean on, but you kind of
I mean, a significant dynamic of the company is that it was. I didn't have that.
But you built a team, and then you had to figure out how to manage all these different personalities.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I certainly have a managerial style.
Right.
Maybe a lack of one, but
which is a style.
Yeah, exactly. No, like I'm a big. I honestly not even this consciously, but like you get good people together and they do their job. And
it's funny. I found a lot of times people do this by accident, but it's the right thing, which is like if you hire the right people, leaving them alone more than normal is the right managerial move.
Yeah.
Like people tend to produce better in that.
I'm reading multiple books.
Very, very true when you're filming or you're casting for a commercial or for, you want to cast the right people. But like once you've got them, there's not much to do.
Over-direct them.
Yeah, you've got them. It's like if you have to direct them too much, that can be problematic because you can't make someone into something they can't,
It's funny, man.
I like lead by showing too. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I agree.
Show, don't tell.
No, you do lead by example for sure.
Kind of get in there.
I had an experience where the person who hired me at Datadog left within a year. And it was a little bizarre because the company was doing very well. It was not for any reason like that or any personal reason within the company. But as the person that I was learning from and it was shocking. And I remember I wrote him an email that was just thanking him for not telling me how to be.
Fair enough.
Thank you for what you've taught me, and especially for not going act this way as an attorney at this company. And it made me, I think, blossom in a way that I probably couldn't have otherwise. And one thing I was overly conscious about earlier in my career is how does an attorney act? You know what I mean? Am I looked at as more responsible and have to carry myself a different way? And what I realized was actually owning it just as myself really helped build some of those relationships you're saying are important because you're authentic. And I think that's something I've learned anyway. It's the easiest way to connect with people is be yourself.
Yeah. I mean, authenticity is critical. And I think, I'm in the right space, right? I really love reading websites. So I could be honest about that and helping them.
Real briefly for you, interesting experience, your mentor at a company hires you, then is gone within a year. How do you navigate that without having an ally or someone who's going to speak up for you in the mix? Was that challenging or what?
This is something that looking back on is one of the best things that ever happened to me. So it's shocking at first because you're shit, this is not only my champion, but to your point, the only person at the company who knows more than me about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it's scary.
Right. That's what I would think.
But he didn't leave without a plan. So the person who was replacing him was someone that had worked with the co-founders previously, was doing kind of part-time work with us, ironically, while he was looking for a GC job at a tech company, and then it happened to be back with Datadog. So that part felt a little more comforting because I knew the person that was going to be my new boss, and we had a good relationship. And then the reason I say it was a blessing, this part I didn't realize till later on, is it turned out where I got two different mentors for different aspects of my career at the right time. So the first person I think taught me a little bit the actual work a lot.
Yeah.
This is what matters in a software
I like
agreement.
doing that. Well, yeah, showing people how to do things.
Yeah. So I learned a lot of the ropes or whatever through him and some other professional stuff, but especially that. When this other guy took over, I was a little more experienced, and he helped me a ton with the career navigation stuff.
Yeah.
Because you guys know me, it's especially when I was younger, I was a hothead. So if someone did something I thought was stupid, I had to point it out. You know what I mean? And he was the person who taught me these things I use today. And what I find funny is the reason he was better for that is that's how he was wired. So he had gone through this in his career where the other guy was more relaxed. He didn't get fired up as easily.
We're going to take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll learn about John's relationship with NYC and what he misses most now that he's raising his family in the suburbs of Connecticut.
One thing we like to talk about with every guest is what's your relationship with New York City? What are your favorite parts?
Yo, let's go.
I love
NYC.
That's right.
I'm sad that, I'm actually not sad about it anymore. I love Connecticut. Shout out CT. But I came to
that.
Yeah, you ever had a CT shout out before? Me and John Mayer, boys. What's really good?
First time?
No, so yeah, I lived in New York City. I had my first two kids here. I lived in Manhattan the whole time from 2004 or 5 to we left.
After graduating college, you moved.
Yeah, I got the job. March 13th, 2020. We headed out of the city and didn't come back. So that's a little sad. But we're a distributed company. But I'm a New Yorker. I love New York. I mean, I always New York. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I always
You come up with that, or is that
no? I just always felt.
Trademark? Is that
I just
John-
always felt
Johnism?
proud of living in New York for a long time because I was like, I guess I made it.
it's true?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, what brought you here? Like, you just a job, or like,
Oh
why'd
my
you stay
God.
for 20 years?
I mean, that's a tough one. It's just where I'm from, man. I guess, like, yeah.
Is that is that where you picture you'd be when you were in college or whatever? Even in high school, you're like, I'll be back here. I'll be in the city. Is that just something that or it just happened?
No,
Maybe a good question.
Actually, honestly, we've gotten personal a little bit here.
Good
But
point.
my friend told me to move to the city actually, because like I didn't know what to do, and he was like, "Dude, you got to get out of your parents' house, and you have to move to the city immediately."
Name drop.
And
Good advice.
I mean, it's hilarious. Honestly, I'm not allowed to name drop him. It's too crazy. It's my buddy Chris from high school. And honestly, he gives great advice, honestly.
That is good advice.
Yeah. And so I took his advice, and I never looked back.
So now that you live in the
I
suburbs
did look back. I'm sorry.
in
Mom, I looked
Connecticut,
back.
what do you miss about New York City?
Definitely the bacon, egg, and cheese. Like I had like a killer bacon, egg, and cheese. It was a wrap actually, but
Whack.
like, yeah, I know. Like, well, shout out like health and lifestyle content.
Call it a breakfast burrito.
Yeah,
People will be cool about it if you did.
It was so good.
It ain't no BEC.
And then just like I'm going to dinner tonight. Just walking around the city, honestly, like the energy is so positive, and being around all these people, like you just feel like you're in the flow. And honestly, I went to Los Angeles recently, and it's just like it kind of struck me how that's an urban environment, just completely distributed differently.
Yeah.
And it just feels weird. And it's like, oh, like this is a massive city over like thousands of miles. And like New York is just bang, like you get why it's so unique now. Or I'm starting to understand why it's so unique now. So yeah, I miss the skyscrapers.
And you're a vibe guy too, right?
Vibes, yeah, I love vibes. Immaculate vibes. No, yeah, NYC vibes are immaculate.
Agreed. All right. Well, my man, we won't keep you from that dinner. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for stopping by.
Thanks.
If people want to check out the products and stuff that you guys sell, where do they go?
Yeah, so hashtag-labs.com. Ironically, I got hashtaglabs.com like a month before we sold the company. The guy used to want like $20,000 for it. And I guess he just let it lapse. And so I had an alert on it. So I got it for like $400, which was pretty awesome.
Shout out to domain squatters.
Yeah. And then,
patience.
the new organization that purchased Hashtag Labs is called Attitude. So I work at Attitude now, attitude.io. It's ADITUDE .io. And yeah, that's it. That's and LinkedIn, honestly. I'm trying to I love LinkedIn.
All right. Awesome, man. Thank you again.
Thanks. All right, good times.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Empire State of Grind. If you like what you heard, please share, like, and subscribe. You can find more information about the guests and sponsors in the show notes, and special thanks to our sponsors and our producer, Brian Neaman. We'll be back with new episodes twice a month, and as we say in New York, peace, we out.